and welcome to We the People Live. I'm Clive Gray, and I'm here with WeThePeopleTermLimits.com. And again, what we're looking for is for people to join our cause and not vote for anybody running their 13th year. Today, we're going to do something a little different, and it's a live stream discussion with a couple of our contributors. The first is Debbie Peterson, who was the previous mayor of Grover Beach, as well as a businesswoman and the author of Happiest Corruption, as well as other books. So she's a delight to have on the board. And also we have Liberty, the Hound of Humanity, perhaps the smartest dog I know. Who knew that a dog could be politically inclined? You give them enough treats, I guess their intelligence grows. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the midterm elections. They were interesting to say the least. And sadly, they're still counting in some counties. With that, let's bring on our associates here, if you will. And I know that our Hall of Shamers in the Senate, I think not one of them got voted out, but in the House, it was a different story. What do you think of that, Debbie?
Yeah, I was really disappointed. I was just scrolling through every single one of the folks who were in shaky positions for re-election, and I could find only one who and I'm going to say it was a city council member. So there you go. There's the importance of getting involved in local government. But in Cincinnati, Ohio, Greg Landsman beat. I think I have Steve or Shane. I can't quite read my writing. Chabot, Chabot, in the Southwest Ohio 1st District, who served for 26 of the last 28 years, was beat by a city council member. So yay, city council members. And interestingly enough, Clive, that was in a redrawn district. And I noticed that where districts had been redrawn, that did cause some shakeups, and it made races be a little bit closer. So I think that's, and maybe that's one of the arguments for redrawing districts. But I have to say that gives me some hope. At least we got one who won.
Well, that's better than zero. And so with that gets us out of the doghouse a little bit. What do you think, Liberty?
Well, is that true that we only got to vote a new person in one case for all those people we talked about that are way past their due dates? They're just, I don't know. I'm very disappointed. I don't know. We have to make a better effort here. We have to get people to understand to vote us some new blood.
Yeah, and I agree. And sadly, I talked to quite a few people afterwards and who have heard our message. And I said, so, what do you think of that? And they said, well, I voted for this guy because he's been there a long time and I really like him. And I was like, but you tend to agree with our message, so I don't understand that. And a lot of our voters seem somewhat complacent, I guess, with, well, this is the way it's always been, and I don't know if I can change it. And I think we really, really need to get the word out that your vote is powerful, and we need to use it. And if we're of like mind with that, we can actually change the government. But it's a tough message to get through, and I do talk to a lot of people about that. But actually, I think, Debbie, you're really keyed in, especially like on the local politics. Same concept, right?
Yeah, and if I'm going to cheat a little bit because my next book is coming out at the beginning of December. So, and it really does come down to local. So, for anybody who's just been elected, City Council 101, this one will. Let's see if I can get it in the picture there. City Council 101. Buy it for everyone who got elected as a city council member. It'll tell them how to do it properly. Excellent. And maybe that's why this good guy won in Ohio. Maybe he knew how to do it right.
Could be too. And, and that's something I have noticed on the local elections here is that the people running their campaigns sometimes aren't willing to do what it takes to win. And I mean, you don't have to be dishonest or anything, but you really have to learn how to market yourself, because a lot of voters just vote on, oh, I remember that name, or I like the way they look on TV or whatever. And you need to get your message across so that people say, oh, I remember them because they actually stand for me. Do you have those issues, Liberty?
Yeah, all the time, of course. But I'll bet that guy in Ohio I bet he has a dog. I just think he does. We should check that out because, behind every successful politician is a good dog, I believe. But, otherwise, I think the most important thing is, why do people keep voting for the same person? Well, maybe that's what we have to figure out, why. And then maybe we can start to figure out how to get them to look further and look at other options.
Yeah, I think they're used to doing that. They're a little dogged in their style.
I noticed as I was reviewing the close races that the folks who, the places where there were shakeups or really close races were the places where someone had been in office for maybe 1 or 2 terms. But pretty much when you got to the point that someone had been in office for 3, maybe 4 or more terms, it was almost impossible to shift them. So there's that name recognition, that ability to continue to raise money that I think starts to really, really make that difference. And I was looking especially at some of the Western states that I knew a little more about, and being from California, and I noticed that especially there were a couple in the Inland Empire. There was Ken Calvert was elected for a 16th term. He first started serving in 1992. He raised $3.3 million. And you think about 16 terms of $3.3 million. That's an awful lot of money that has been thrown at that guy. And then also in the Inland Empire, let me see if I can find who we had here. I think it was, that was Arizona. Well, let me go to Arizona because I'm not sure if I wrote this guy down, but in Arizona, we had talked about Representative Schweikert, and he was the one, Clive, I think he's the one that you and I had discussed. He was the one who the Federal Elections Commission and the House committee fined for campaign violation spending. And he misspent some congressional office funds. You remember, I think he spent some on tuition and golf and various things. And he actually received a formal House reprimand in 2020. He's from Scottsdale in Northeast Phoenix, and they voted him in again. So you wonder, what do you have to do to not get back in office by the time you've been voted in 16 times and spent millions on campaigns?
Well, I do remember way back in the 80s, I think it might have been a little earlier, but there was a gentleman who was running for public office and he was incarcerated at the time, and he got elected. And we just all shook our heads going, the guy's been incarcerated and he's talking about an honest campaign. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. That's something where I would think Liberty would want to do a leg lift on something like that.
Quite frankly, my thought on that is I believe a lot of it is because people are voting for a party. Yes. And they're not going any further in thinking. I mean, I have a dog brain, so obviously I need more help than most humans to think these things through. But what I think is it's just easy to go, I identify with this, so I'm going to vote for that candidate. And you have no idea what's going on with that candidate. And that must be why these people that get elected for 40 years, I mean, think about that. That's like 4 lifetimes for me. That's a long time to be in one job, no less, in the job of to be the responsibility that a governmental job should carry.
Yeah, and it's, I have talked to people after the elections going, okay, you voted for these people, so what was their platform? What is their record? And they give you generalizations, but they really don't know what they've done in office. And yet, well, he was there for 3 terms, so he must be good. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, seriously, you have no idea. And
well, You know, we can tell you that he's good at raising money. His face fits, or her face fits. He's good on TV. He's photogenic, probably the tallest candidate, usually for president, the tallest candidate. So there are some things they're good at, but I think the biggest service we can do is to educate people on looking at, as Liberty said, looking at what they're actually producing, what they really do, and what they really stand for, and whether they stand for what they say they stand for, whether they really do what they say they'll do when they're elected. I mean, if you tell Liberty to sit, Liberty sits. But if you tell your congressman to sit, let's find out if they sit. If you tell them to stand, let's see if they stand for what they say they stand for.
No,
well, you have to give them a treat to make them sit.
And that is the problem. And that is why I wrote The Happiest Corruption, because there are way too many who need their treat before they'll do anything.
But I think they're taking their own treats. We're not giving them their treats. They're just taking them. I think
they're taking the treats.
We're paying.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we do it voluntarily, but we're paying for
you know, I had a conversation yesterday with Jack Canfield, who's the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And we were talking about whistleblowers and Bobby Kennedy. And Bobby Kennedy had said just before he was assassinated, and Jack obviously was a very young man then, but he heard him speak in Chicago. And Bobby Kennedy said, you know, there's so much corruption in government. You have two choices. You either go along with it or you stand against it. And he said he was choosing to stand against it, and he didn't stand for long. But that's a whole other story. But I had looked up the statistics, and the FBI claims that they're not available. However, there is another organization that investigates government crime and teaches people how to avoid it. And if you look only, not at all white collar crime, but I'm talking about just government criminals, people we elect or people who serve in government for us, supposedly for us, it is $150 billion in 2017 goes into the pockets of people we elect to serve us. And of that, only half of it is ever discovered. And of what's discovered and actually turned in to anybody, turned into the feds to go after. And believe me, when it's discovered, it's not always turned in, as we know. Sometimes it's just mostly it's brushed under the rug, under the carpet. But what actually is put forward, referred up to the feds of this 75 billion now we're talking about, or more, the feds only charge, not prosecute, charge less than 40% of it. And of course, then how many convictions actually come out of that, and how many just do plea bargains. And as I think Liberty said, or maybe it was you, Clive, they get reelected. So it's, we have a really big job. We, the people, have a really big job to ride herd on government, because frankly, the FBI can't do it all. It's our job to do that, to elect good people.
No, and it's true. Like insider trading. I mean, when they're caught, it's such a minimal fine that it's cheaper than taxes. So it's like, you got to be kidding me. It just, and you know, to your point earlier too, I was in the TV business and the modeling business, and it was the same thing. Your viewer audience was based on how good you looked on camera, how tall you were, and politics is very much the same. These people are groomed. A classic example of that, I believe, is AOC. And, you know, she looks good on camera, and she did some modeling work previously. And that really helped get her elected, because she had a good appearance on the screen. And
Lassie, we need Lassie for president.
I'm down with that.
Falling down the well.
Or what about Skippy the bush kangaroo?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, no, sorry. Skippy's not American. That would not, I can't advocate for that. I'd get put in jail.
I hear Skippy's peanut butter.
I love peanut butter.
I'll bet you do. As do I. I just eat it differently than you do.
But I think that, going back to that silly point I made, I got there because we've had a lot of movie star presidents, a lot of movie star governors, and that makes the point you've been making, Clive. It's how good you look.
Yeah, and again, it's just that's the purpose of what we're doing is look at the record, look at how long they've been there, look at their net worth, how it's increased. I forget which I lost my thought there. Yeah, I forget. Oh, anyway, sorry.
You're talking about their net worth, Clive. Look at their net worth. Look at what they've
we were
achieved.
talking about that one. I think it was a congressman who was lamenting that he'd only doubled his net worth from 21 million to 42 million or whatever. And it's like, seriously, get in the real world here, kids. I mean, we can't even relate to that, and yet you're opining about how sad you are that you only doubled your income. It's like, oh my goodness. It shows you how actually really
let's look a little bit towards the future. What is it we're going to work on? What is it we're looking for? How is it we're going to work with people to see if we can't improve the situation?
Well, that's a tough nut, actually, because it really comes down to our vote and educating people. California is a classic example of where, we have a governor who says, buy electric cars, but we're going to shut down the electric grid at certain times because we don't have enough power for the homes. It's like, I mean, where was the thought in that? And the federal government's no different. And this latest, the Inflation Reduction Act, seriously, you're going to spend our tax dollars to figure out how to reduce inflation. It's real simple. Quit spending money. I mean, you don't need an act for that. And the other thing that people don't realize that I think all the laws that they enact, they're exempt from in one form or another. They're not allowed to do insider trading. So they do get penalized a few $100s, but that's not a penalty. I mean, because if we do it, we go to jail, Martha Stewart, right? So, people just need to really wake up and really listen and turn off your TV and talk with one another and say, hey, look, how happy are you? What's going on in your life? And why do you think that's happening? You can't always blame the corporations because they operate in concert, actually, with the federal government. I mean, they can't do what they do without the federal government allowing it to happen.
And, it really is the case that white collar crime is, it costs the country an awful lot more than I think it's something like 6 times more what the illegal drug trade costs us, white collar crime. But if you look at how much at what gets prosecuted more, what gets fined more, what costs more, you see the Bernie Madoffs and is it Bernie Madoff? You see the really big ones that get prosecuted, but there's a lot of smaller stuff that really costs us a lot of money. Us, you, me, everybody, the taxpayers, including government crime. And I think that, perhaps part of the reason it doesn't get prosecuted is because, for one, it doesn't pay to prosecute it because you don't make enough money for prosecuting it. So I think we need to, as you're saying, create a lot greater disincentives in terms of what it costs people if they do steal from us. And I think the crime of stealing from the people is one of the greatest crimes. When we put our trust in people, when we elect them to support us, to care about us, to represent us, to provide us a government that serves us, and they steal from us, that should be hugely punished. And they should pay for the cost of prosecuting it. And so I that's something that we can certainly advocate for. And anyway, I'm on my soapbox there. I don't know what you call it when a dog goes off on a rant like that.
Well, it's not a soapbox. I'm always looking for the treat box, but I do want to introduce an idea that we can use to measure. And Clive, that I keep a special book called the Dogtionary, and it's my official reference book. And in the Dogtionary are doginitions. Those are the meanings for all the special words I use. So I want to introduce, we need to be able to measure the progress our politicians are making while solving problems. So if we want to measure the actual progress they're making, we need a micrometer because, as you know, micrometers measure minuscule, tiny, unobservable intervals, almost unobservable. And Clive, any guesses as to what instrument we need to measure the progress our government tells us they have made, but actually did not? What are we going to use to measure that?
Measure their actual progress?
Yeah, no. Measure the progress they're telling us they've made, but they actually haven't.
A microscope?
No.
What they're claiming. Well, I don't know if I can say it on the show because it's
big.
It's a BS meter.
Think big. No, that we need to. They're telling us it's massive, right? We've made massive progress for you people, but they haven't. So to measure what they tell us, I think we need a sextant, because a sextant measures the angular distance between celestial objects, massive impossible intervals. So if they're telling us we need a sextant, we need a micrometer. Okay? And that's my dogonition for the day.
I like it. Well, you got the sextant on one end and election microscope on the other.
And we're not going there. Because if we do, I'll go on to a whole nother rant.
Uh-oh. Isn't that how we measure germs and diseases with an electron microscope?
Well, that's an election microscope as well.
I think we're at both ends of the scale. You know, the one end of the scale is how much they say they're doing, which is a huge measurement. And then the teeny weeny one, the electron microscope, which is what they're really doing.
Exactly.
You know, Clive, you've just inadvertently come up with another dogonition, election microscope.
There you go.
And that's awesome. I'm going to write that down and add it to the dictionary.
There you go. You know, I want a copy of that dictionary, even if it's dog-eared. So anyway, so it's been a great discussion, and I'm glad you guys could join me for this. You know, again, everybody stay tuned, keep in touch. We, the people, termlimits.com. We are the ones with the power, and we need to realize that. And also dollars. Think about it. In an election, if say you get 3 million people to vote and each one of them contributed $1 to a good candidate, that's $3 million. And it wouldn't hurt us. I mean, so people don't understand that your one vote and your $1 can make a huge difference if we would all get together and actually read and understand what these politicians are doing and look at their records, and look at the flip-flops and, decide. Don't just vote because they look good on TV or you like the sound of their name. So anyway, thank you for joining us on Clive Gray with We the People, termlimits.com. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Liberty. A little late on that.